All right, we're going to be in Matthew chapter 8 and Mark chapter 1 today. We're going to be talking about about Jesus cleansing the leper. And I have three different titles for this sermon. Might as well. I got 3 points for the sermon, so make three different titles, right? I think I am settling on cleansed by compassion. Jesus had compassion and he cleansed the man. So the other title is Learning from a Leper. We can learn a lot from a leper as a Christian, and I'm going to tell you about leprosy right now. Leprosy is still active today in our modern world. It's a chronic infection caused by bacteria. Leprosy causes changes in the body, which are often evident in a person's appearance. Skin lesions appear on the body, arms, legs, and face. Many of these lesions produce damage to sensory nerves, which makes the skin numb in these areas. As the disease progresses, tissues are destroyed, and lack of pain sensation leads to traumatic injuries to the hands and the feet. Open sores are a pathway to infections, which are the cause of death in many cases. Persons with leprosy cannot hide their disease. It is visible on their faces and their bodies. I try to imagine the fear they experienced in those years before modern medical treatment could arrest and cure the disease. How frightening it must have been to know the inevitable future which those first lesions predicted. But the physical distress and the emotional response to a future of disease and death were only part of the burden of the leper. The poor man or woman was labeled unclean. It is likely that the designation was at first a hygienic one meant to prevent the spread of the disease from one person to another. Just when this physical quarantine was twisted into a moral judgment is not clear, but by Jesus' time it was evident that lepers were society's despised outcasts. They were driven from their homes and had to live outside the city. When a normal person approached, they had to shout a warning, "Unclean, unclean," while keeping the mouth covered to prevent. So as a leper, if you were to walk by somebody, you had to cover your mouth and yell out twice, "Unclean, unclean," for you to walk by someone that was clean. Could you imagine being a leper? Could you imagine what the character of a person with leprosy that didn't give up, that kept going, that faced all these jokes, that were made fun of, that were outcasts, that were pushed out of the city? Can you imagine? And there's some people that may feel that way today. They feel like they don't have any friends. They feel like no one likes them, or they're being made fun of, or they're just an outcast, or they have no family, they have no friends, and they feel like they've been pushed out. Well, you know what? Jesus thought it was so important to him to look at this leper and not just let him walk by, but to touch this man. Okay, Jesus wanted to touch the unclean. That's why he came. He came to clean and to cleanse this man. Okay, and this is the second time that the word "cleanse" is used in the New Testament. It's this cleansing of the leprosy. Now, when Christ comes into your heart and he comes into your life, he cleanses you. He cleanses you from the inside out. And this disease is in the body, but it shows itself on the outside, just like sin. You have sin that is in your heart. It is in your blood. It is in your DNA. And where does it come out? On the outside. It shows itself on the outside. So leprosy and being a sinner is not far apart. There's not a lot of difference between a leper and a sinner. Okay, if we'll look at this and compare what Jesus is doing here with his character, that's what we really need to look at here. So Matthew chapter 8, starting in verse 1. When Jesus, had come down from the mountain, great multitudes followed him. And behold, a leper came down and worshipped him, saying, "Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean." Then Jesus put out his hand and touched him and said, "I am willing, be cleansed." Immediately his leprosy was cleansed. And Jesus said to him, "See that you tell no one, but go your way, show yourself to the priest, and offer the gift that Moses commanded as a testimony to them." And in Mark chapter 1, verse 40, now a leper came to him, imploring him, kneeling down to him. Kneeling down shows his action of worship. Okay, he is bowing down. and he's kneeling down to him and saying, if you are willing, you can make me clean. Then Jesus moved with compassion. Okay, this is, we find this word compassion a lot in the New Testament. We find it all over the Gospels. Jesus was moved with compassion. And it always said he was moved with compassion after he's seen what? The multitudes. He's seen multitudes of people without a leader, and he fell with compassion for them because they were walking aimlessly, had nowhere, no direction. And he had compassion on. And he sees this leper. And this leper is walking to him, kneeling down, saying, God, if you're willing, you can heal me. And Jesus had compassion. He stretched out his hand and touched him and said to him, I am willing, be cleansed. As soon as he had spoken, immediately the leprosy left him and he was cleansed. And he strictly warned him and sent him away at once and said to him, see that you say nothing to anyone, but go your way, show yourself to the priest, and offer for your cleansing those things which Moses commanded as a testimony to them. However, he went out and began to proclaim it freely to those and to spread the matter so that Jesus could no longer openly enter the city, but was outside in deserted places, and they came to him from every direction. Okay, so we have Matthew's account, we have Mark's account, and dealing with the leper and dealing with his uncleanliness and Jesus touching him and Jesus cleansing him and sending him to the priest. We have so much information here. Cleansing is not the only reason for Jesus to be involved in this man's life. Now, cleansing was part of his healing. But him being healed or cleansed was not the only thing that came out of this. Right? Can you imagine the people around him that knew him, that seen who he was, that knew how he acted, that knew where he hung out, and he's no longer hanging out there. He's allowed to go to different places, and he doesn't act the same anymore. Sounds to me like a conversion. Okay, so I'm going to equate this leprosy a lot with being a natural-born sinner today. Okay, when he was cleansed, it was immediate. It says it is immediate cleansing. And there was a difference on the outside. How is there a difference on the outside? Because he could go to the priest. There had to be a difference on the outside. He could go to the priest and talk to them and tell them what happened. But he didn't listen. He didn't listen all the way. Like most people get caught up in, we don't listen all the way. We listen 3/4, or we'll do part of what we're supposed to do. But he didn't listen all the way. And had he listened all the way, the ministry that Jesus would have done could have been better. Could have been bigger. He could have spent more time in that place instead of having to leave because of the crowds. The compassion Christ carried for the leper is it. The compassion that Christ carried for the leper is the compassion that we need to carry for our life, for our existence, for the time that we spend here, the compassion that we have. And I've had people ask me, and now I live a pretty busy life. This weekend at our marriage retreat, we were asked to make a banner. You know, when football teams come on the field, they make these banners, okay? And they run through these banners. And our banner was, we had to mix our names up. So we used Shockley. We used Shock, and Tanya's part of her last name was Yeah. So Shakya, that was our name, Team Shakya. And on Team Shakya, we had a big clock. And on that clock, on 1, we had something. On 2, we had something. So on this clock, we put everything that we're involved in ministry in our life. And our theme was, we can do more in 24 hours than most people can. So, or we can do 30 hours of work in 24 hours. I mean, that's how we live our life. In the ministry, right, Larry? In the ministry, that's what you do. I've had people ask me, how do you balance this? How do you do this? And I can honestly boil it all down to this. I am compassionate about what I do. I love doing what I do, or I wouldn't do it. Amen. Who else would want to give up all their time for everybody else and not take a lot for themselves and their family? Who else would want to do that? Okay? It's part of what my job description is. As a pastor, this is who I am. This is what I do. You ask, how can I do it? Because God gave me the job. He gave me the gift. And He's given you a gift as well. And that you should be using. But it's the compassion. My wife, she said the reason that she loved me and she fell in love with me because I was compassionate. Okay? So I believe that the first thing that I really learned as a Christian was compassion, learning to love people. That's it. And this is one thing that I know Jesus, he wasn't, when Mark and Matthew wrote this, he was filled with compassion. Do you think Jesus reached over, elbowed his disciples, and said, hey, I just want y'all to know I'm being compassionate right now, so when you go to write about me, write down I was compassionate. How could they tell he was compassionate? His actions. This word, he was filled with compassion. It's like it's a word that describes a feeling from your bowels, okay, from your stomach. I mean, when my uncle passed away last year, I've never cried in a trembling, shaking, uncontrollable way. I can imagine this filled with compassion, this from the bowels. I've never cried from my stomach before until last year. I can imagine what they meant when they said he's seen the multitudes and he was filled with compassion. Okay, he was filled with the desire. He was filled with this feeling that they could tell, they could see it. Okay, it was evident what meant something to him. Okay, and they could tell that people is what caused compassion. People is what Jesus was compassionate about. Not job, not even miracles. Not even miracles. He wasn't passionate about miracles. He said, go, don't even tell anybody. Please don't tell anybody. I'm about mission, not miracles. Although Jesus is involved in miracles, the mission is the purpose, not the miracles. It's the Creator that is the purpose, not the creation. Okay? So he was told to go to the priest, and Jesus wanted the men to get the man to give a cleansing offering for the priest to see he was healed and to see that he was obeying the law of Moses. Is that right? Yes, obeying the law of Moses. And the offering, I think, was 2 birds, something like that. Wasn't nothing big, but it was a cleansing offering. Cleansing offering to who? God. They were in the temple by the priest, and they wanted the priest to see, hey, and I bet this is the priest heard of what happened, and everybody heard what happened. This man went all over telling everybody what was going on, and Jesus' mission wasn't being fulfilled the way that he wanted it to because of one person not doing their job. Just one person. You think you're just one person and what I do doesn't make a difference? What you do does make a difference. Yes. If this man would have been quiet, Jesus could have stayed a little bit longer, saved a few more, and got his word out a little faster. What one person in here isn't doing their job that could be a chain reaction to history? I mean, this one man's decision was a chain reaction to history. We have it. We've got it. So it does matter what you're one person, you do. It does matter what you do. Leprosy was a repulsive to all who saw the people. It was at this time, all the lepers were isolated outside the city walls. You could find most of the people at the city dump. Why? Because they're hungry. Okay? They're hungry. You could become unclean by touching. Okay, so that was a big thing, not to touch. You could die from the disease. It doesn't mean if you touch them you would get the disease, but you can get the disease. And when a leper was healed, he was to go to the priest and pronounce to the priest that he was clean, so the priest could pronounce him clean so that he could be a part of society again. In Mark chapter 1, verse 38, says, "Let us go into the next towns that I may preach there also, because for this purpose I have come forth." So why did Jesus come? To preach. He said, I come to preach. I come to preach. And after his disciples came to Jesus, telling him that everyone is looking for him, Jesus says, listen, I'm here to preach. Let's go to the next city. Let's stay focused. Let's preach. I love Jesus' attitude, don't you? He's pretty focused. In the Sermon on the Mount we just got done, chapter 5, verse 17, Jesus says, "Do not think that I came to destroy the law of the prophets, but I did not come to destroy, but to fulfill." And then right after that, he touches this man that is against the law for him to touch. Okay, and during his sermon, what did he say that sin was? Sin was an issue of your heart. It's an issue of your heart. It's where your heart's at. And obviously, Jesus' heart was filled with compassion for this man, so touching him meant nothing. It wasn't something that bothered him. Okay? There are times in some people's lives that God wills for us to go through physical affliction. Paul went to God 3 different times and said, "I've got this thorn in the flesh. Lord, take it, take it, take it," 3 times. Sometimes God wills for us to be physically afflicted. Now, if you don't agree with me, don't get mad at me. Just don't agree with me. Now, I've had a lady that I've done work for, and she said, "Well, you can be healed. God doesn't want you in pain, and God wants you to be healed." How far does that go? I mean, if that is the idea and the definition is God doesn't want you to go through pain, how far does that last? Like, how old do you get to do that? Like, if God wanted you not to have hurt and not to have pain, he wouldn't have death. We would keep going and going and going. Okay? Amen. So God does will for some to have pain. Yes. I mean, do you expect that did God expect for Mary not to have pain when her son died? He willed for her to be in pain by choosing her as Jesus. I mean, there are so many things we could talk about, but God does will for some people to be in pain. Yes. Not everybody has to be healed. Not everybody's going to be healed, and not everybody's supposed to be healed. Jesus said, "I come here to preach. I come here to preach." Yes. It's not about the miracles. It's about the mission. Yes. I've got a mission. So Paul asked 3 times to remove the thorn. Why does God want us? Or to allow us to go through pain? Why does He allow this? Well, that's where you find the book of James to come in so much. The book of James talks about trials and about what those trials do to us. Why do you go through trials? Anybody?
We need them.
Why do you need them? To train you, to make you stronger, to get you to who you're supposed to be. Man, if I went through life without ever facing a problem, what kind of person would I be? What kind of character would I have? I'd do whatever I want, whenever I want, because nothing would bother me. There's no guards. Nothing's, I mean, come on. God gives us this pain so that we learn how to handle it, and we can handle more in the future. I believe God allows trials in my life so that I can become stronger, so that I can do my job appropriately.
Yes. Amen.
The leper said, "If you will." Do you think that he was doubting Jesus? He went up to him. He wasn't doubting him. No. He went up to him. So what did Jesus teach us about praying? Jesus taught us about praying was whatever your will is in heaven, your will be done on earth. Praying for the Father's will. Now, a lot of people talk about God answering prayers, and I'm not saying God doesn't answer prayers. I'm not saying God does answer prayers. What I'm saying is God works through praying people. God calls us to pray. If God wills it to be done, it's going to be done, whether you pray it or not. God works through praying people. You want to be worked through, you become a prayerful person. God will get your heart in beat with His if you are a prayerful person, if you take time to talk to God. My wife's heart and my heart have the same beat because we are continually talking. We continue talking about our life, what direction we're going. So we are on the same track. We are on the same beat. And you can be like that with God. And you can pray for His will on earth because He'll tell you what to pray for. So this man's saying, if you will, you can make me clean. He wasn't talking about Jesus' ability. That was settled. If it's not out of line with the purpose of God's will, then he will. Now, if you pray for things that are out of God's will, then he won't. If you pray for things that are in God's will, then he will. Pretty simple. Now remember, I don't think it's a bad thing to pray for God to take care of your bills, but that's what jobs are for. Okay? Paychecks take care of your bills. Now, yes, it is funny, but it's true. Yes. It's like going through a trial and saying, God, get me out of here. I put you in there. Yes. What do you mean, get you out? This is for your benefit that I leave you. This leper had no doubt. He had a need. I see a problem with the American church is that Americans don't need God. They don't need Jesus. They've got their home, they've got their job. They don't need Jesus. You know why they don't need Jesus? Because they don't run to Jesus. They don't talk to Jesus. They don't pray to Jesus. They've got their home, they've got their car, they've got their life. They've got their physical needs. Why do we need Jesus? What is he going to offer us that we don't have? It's going to be hard to be an American Christian because you got everything in your way that wants to be your God. Yeah. Yes, sure. Everything. Well, I can have that stuff and be a Christian? Absolutely. 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 But it's not about the creation. It's about the Creator. If our life is lived about the creation, then we're more worried about our friend's toys than our friend. We go to our friend's house to play with his toys, not to play with him. We serve Jesus because what he can give us, not because of who he is. This leper knew he had a problem. Do you know you have a problem? Do you know that you have a sin problem? Do you know that you, as a person, as a living, breathing human being, know that there is sin that is involved? Now, I'm not telling you right now that you're in sin, so don't hear what I'm not saying. There are so many people that think they're just good enough, that good enough is good enough. And it's not. There is no one good enough. Amen. Not on your best day. Amen. Not in your best way, not in your best Sunday clothes, not selling everything and giving it to the poor. Are you going to make it into heaven because you're a good person? You have to recognize you got an issue. This leper realized there was an issue, and he went to Jesus. Where do you go when you have an issue? Who do you go to? You say, I don't go nowhere. I just figure it out. You're not using Jesus the way he wants to be used. Jesus is there for those issues. He wants us to come to him. Why else is God called our Father? As a child, when I walk in the house, my children, you know what they come to me? They come up to me and hug me. My daughter, I've taught my 2-year-old to call me Father. I like it when she calls me Father. She says, hi, Father. I say, hi, daughter. So she's my daughter, I'm her father. So, but who does she come to when she's hurting? She comes to her father. She loves me. She cares for me. She knows she has a need and that Daddy can fix it. If we just realize the needs that we really do have and go to the Father to ask him to fix them, we'd be in so much better shape. But we spend our whole lives trying to fix these little things that God could just take care of if we would just go to him. What do we find about this leper that's amazing? What we find is that he is applying and active in his faith. He lived it out. He believed that Jesus can do it, and he found him. He sought him out. He said, seek and you will find. He sought, he found, he was cleansed. I mean, is it going to take leprosy for us to crawl to God? And sometimes that's what happens. Sometimes it takes crawling to God. Sometimes it takes something big for God to open your eyes to say, listen, I want you, but I want your attention. Now, my prayer is not that God gives us all leprosy so we can walk by him and say, unclean, unclean, clean me. my prayer would be that we would reach out to God before it ever gets to that point. We should too. We as Christians, how are you applying your faith? How are you applying your faith? Listen, anybody in here ever live a busy life? Raise your hand. Okay. Gosh. I don't know who doesn't. I don't know who's not busy. What do we do with Christianity in a busy life? What do we do with it? What do you do with it? What do you do with Christianity? I know you're busy. What do you do with it? You say, well, I don't have time. Lord, I'm sorry. I know I'm standing in front of you right now, and you're probably wondering why I didn't do anything. I was just busy, God. You blessed me with so much stuff. You just kept me busy all the time with all your blessings. How was I going to praise your name with all the blessings you gave me? Now, I'm saying that, kind of jokingly, but in reality, if we look at people's lives that call themselves Christians that don't do anything for the Lord, it's what they do. They let God's blessings become a curse. And it removes them from any Christian activity, any Christian lifestyle. We should have active faith. And if we have real faith, we will have active faith. We should know God can do what He is willing. Trust in His goodness. Trust that what He is allowing to occur in your life is for your benefit. This is not here to harm you. My goal whenever I punish my children is not to hurt them. My goal is to give them a little bit of pain right now so that in the future, when they make that mistake and they're older, it's not a lot of pain. When my daughter draws on the walls at home, I want to tell her it's bad there before she goes and vandalizes and starts tagging walls and goes to jail. Don't think she will. Just an example. I want my daughter to learn when she's young and the consequences aren't extreme, so that when it comes time for them to be extreme, she's already learned. I'm not going to do that. Trust the Father's goodness. Don't look at everything that happens in your life as a trial as God's punishing you, or you're just a bad Christian, or God doesn't love you. Take it as God's getting involved in your life, and He wants to be involved, and He wants to show you, hey, I'm involved. I'm right here. I'm showing you. The leper made a humble request. Humility. What part of your life shows humility? What part of your life shows humility? I mean, this leper was begging. He got down on his knees and he reached out to Jesus. He said, I'm unclean. He got on his knees and he started working. Are you too prideful to do this? To humble yourself? To tell God, I've got issues? To tell God what He already knows? To be honest with your spouse? To be honest with your friends? To be honest with your co-workers? To be honest. Is it too much to ask for us to be honest? To be humble? To be truthful? To be real? Jesus was moved with compassion. It came from within. And remember, Jesus didn't stop to remind His friends that He was compassionate. They've seen it. I've got some compassionate friends. Not very many, but I've got some. And I can tell you who they are. I can tell you who they are. I got some other friends that I don't know that have ever done anything ministry-wise. And they call themselves Christians. It's easy to see. It's easy to see. It was something that his friends noticed. What do your friends notice about you? What do they know about you? Jesus' friends knew He was compassionate for people. My wife, if you ask her, she's not in here, go ask her after church. Ask her what her favorite thing about me is. She's going to tell you, compassionate for people. I promise you. That's one of the things she'll tell you. Now, I'm not saying that I am, and I'm not trying to use this as anything to brag, but she sees that in me. I don't tell her to say that. She told me that. And when she told me that, I realized it, and I began to see why it made a difference in my life, being compassionate. And if you don't have grace, you won't have compassion, by the way.
Amen.
Jesus had a physical reaction to his convictions. Do you have physical reactions to your convictions? Jesus was convicted, and he reacted in a spiritual way. He had a physical reaction to his spiritual conviction that caused this compassion, that caused this feeling, that caused this cleansing. Even though this man went off and did exactly what Jesus told him not to do, God still let him heal him. Can you believe that? After all that I've done and I have not been blessed, this guy goes off and does the exact opposite that Jesus told him, and he gets cleansed. Some people have heavier loads to carry in life. I don't know how God chooses that. I don't. I didn't have a fair childhood. I didn't have a fair childhood getting brought up in my life. I didn't have a fair life. But I don't use that to say, well, I think God is going to bless me a little bit more, or God's going to be a little bit easier on me. I understand that it doesn't matter how hard my life was or how easy it was. I have the same rules that you go by.
Yes. Amen.
Everybody has the same rules. We have the same Creator. Now, we don't have the same Father. We do have the same Creator. Not everybody's father's the same. Jesus said, I am willing, be cleansed. Ray Stedman says that this phrase is the green light of God, saying, I am willing. The purpose of the leprosy may not be fully known to you, may not be fully known to me. But what we do know is that cleansing happened. He was cleansed. How many people did it affect? I don't know. Could it have had a negative effect on more people than it had a positive effect because of his sin? Because of his healing, because of his disobedience, because of him telling everybody he was healed? Did it have a more negative effect on the community or a positive effect? We know that it had a negative effect. We know that. But did the good outweigh the bad? That's why every decision is important. Every decision. Not just the big ones, every decision. We may not know everything about it, but we know he was cleansed. And then he went and sinned right afterwards. Sounds kind of like about everybody I've read in the scripture. God does something for them, and they go off and be stupid. If I just did this, you're going to go off and be stupid. I just helped you, and now you're going to go do this. Sound familiar?
Yes.
Maybe part of the human sinful nature, the part that we're supposed to deny. Jesus says in Matthew 8:4, see that you tell no one. Now, that's not the first time that Jesus says not to say anything. The first time he was talking about bragging. Now he's talking about shut your mouth because I still got work to do, and I don't want everybody all up in my business. I want to preach. I got stuff to do. I got places to go. Well, when they found out, they just bombarded him, multitudes of people, and he couldn't get his mission done. They were too worried about the miracles. Christ is referring to the mission over the miracles and diverting the attention. We see in Mark 1:45 that, however, he went out and began to proclaim it freely and to spread the matter so that Jesus could no longer openly enter the city, but was outside in the deserted places, and they came to him from every direction. I wonder how many, now this may not fit for you, and you may not like it, but I wonder how many people's lives they have pushed Jesus outside the walls and come to him when they need him, and only when they need something. This is what they did. They were all leaving the city to go out and find him because they wanted a miracle. Yeah. The only time you go to Jesus is it for something. I remember the first time I called my mom. This is after I'd been sober for a while, and I'd been saved for a few years, and I called my mom, and I said, "Hey, Mom, how are you doing?" And we didn't have a great relationship at this time, and she said, "What do you want?" At that time, every time I called was for something. So she assumed I was calling for something. And that was the first time I think that I actually called my mom just to say hi and not to say I need something. And that has stuck with me since that day, and it won't leave me. What do you want? Actually, nothing. I just wanted to call. And that's where I build my relationship with God. It's not about what I need from you, God. It's about what I need from you. You know, not physically, but spiritually. What can I have with you? Not what can I get from you. Amen. It makes a difference. It makes a difference. In a relationship with your spouse, if you just have that relationship for something, that relationship's not going to be that great. Something may be great, but not everything's going to be great. If that relationship is for each other, the whole thing can be great. But if you're using your spouse for something and that's it, there's not a relationship. Jesus moved out of the area, and when people wanted something, they wanted a miracle, they tried to go find him. Now, I don't know if Jesus, when he was preaching on top of the mountain, I don't know if he was preaching just to his disciples because he only invited his disciples. I don't know if he was preaching because to everybody else. It says when he came down from the hill, the multitudes followed him. So it gives the idea that Jesus was on the mountain with just a few people, and there were other people at the bottom of the mountain. It's kind of the view that it gives. I don't know if these people were just waiting for a miracle, or they didn't really want to hear the message. They just wanted the miracle. I don't know what the deal was. But when Jesus was walking around doing miracles, he always had people around him. When he started preaching about sin, when he started preaching about repentance, when he started preaching about the truth, about his mission, everybody left. He was saddened because so many people left. Best teacher, best preacher in the world, and he couldn't keep a congregation.
Amen. Amen.
Some people just don't like truth. Some people don't like the light shine on them because they don't like seeing how dark things really are. You may leave here today knowing there's sin in your life, but you will not do anything about it because it hurts to look. How do you think this leper felt? You think the pain that he felt every day, people looking at him, making fun of him. He had to be outside of the city. He had to go scrounge up food from other people's leftovers. You think it hurts to admit you're wrong? You think it hurts to have sin and have it for a little bit, and you're like, oh, okay, I'll deal with it one day, and not today? Are you coming to Jesus for a miracle? Or are you coming to him because it's your mission? Are you coming to Jesus for what you can get out of him, or for what you can do for him? You know, when a couple years ago, we handed out membership letters for this church. We gave membership letters, and we asked people, what are you going to do for the church? Like, what? What kind of membership letter is that? Because I'm not interested in what you want me to do for you. I'm interested, what is your spiritual calling? What has God called you to? How can we use it? And I'm not saying we won't do anything for you, because we do. That's what we do. But I don't want that to be the goal. What are you going to do for me? If you don't like me asking you, what are you going to do for me? Don't ask me, what are you going to do for me? People were there for a miracle. Jesus was there for a mission. Jesus is still here for a mission. Jesus has us here for a mission. And that mission is to what? Well, Matthew chapter 28 tells us that we are to go, disciple, teach, baptize. We are to seek and save. We are to seek out, and we are not saving. All we do is get people lost. Jesus does the saving, right? So we get people lost. Jesus saves them. We disciple them. We baptize them. We do what we can.
Yes.
Now, are you involved in that? Are you involved in that part? Because that's the part. That's the mission.
Yes.
That's the whole mission.
Absolutely.
The whole mission. That's the job. You know what? Y'all are so lucky. This is 2 Sundays in a row with 30-minute messages. I'm not joking. I'm being easy. I just want to get the message through.
Yes.
Just want to get the message through. I'm trying to take any of the side dishes out. I want to give you main course, okay, and a little bit of dessert. But I'm taking the side dishes out. So, 30 minutes. If I can keep your attention for 30 minutes and give you a lot of food, then that's what we're going to do. It's closed. Cleansed by compassion. You know why that leper was cleansed? Because someone was compassionate. You know why I am here today? Because someone was compassionate to invite me to church. I had one person in my lifetime invite me to church, and it worked. One time. And it worked. Doesn't work every time. I've invited a lot of people to church. I've invited a lot, but for me, all it took was one time. There could be another me out there.
Yes.
It could only take one time of inviting somebody to get them to realize, oh, that's it. I'm lost.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll be saved. Oh, okay, I'll follow you, Lord. Okay.
Amen. Yeah.
But it just starts with you. It starts with you inviting. It starts with you talking to people. It starts with you living out that life. And see, Jesus, he preached that sermon and immediately came down the mountain and went to work. Immediately went to work. How often are we going to work? I was just in closing, Pierce.
Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead, preach.
This weekend with our marriage retreat, it showed me a lot about my relationship. I'm so glad that I work on my marriage. Gosh, I'm so glad that I've been fortunate enough to have good father-in-law and mother-in-law that teaches us about marriage maintenance, because having a marriage that works is so much easier to go through life than having to fight against each other all the time. And for Christians, if we could do the same thing here, if we could get along, if we could we don't have to agree on 100% of our theology, okay? Now, one thing we will agree 100% on here is that Jesus is the only way, and it only comes by grace through faith. If you try to teach anything besides that in this church, you will be outside teaching to the grass.
Amen.
That's the only thing we're teaching here, okay? You have to agree with that. Other things, other preferences, if you have a preference and it doesn't spell it out in Scripture, please don't come to me and tell me I'm in sin, because I'm not doing it the way you do it. We can disagree on things and still be friends and love each other. Me and my wife don't agree on 100% on everything. We don't fight about it either. So just because we don't agree doesn't mean we have to fight. So as a family, as a church, as Christians, we've got a lot of tightening up to do in our lives, in our church, in our kids, in our work, in our family, in ourselves, everything. We've got a lot of tightening up to do. And I believe that because we're still here. And as long as we're still here, we've got things to clean up. So, my prayer is that God will give us those opportunities to show Him how much we love Him before He starts opening the floodgates of illness and pain and this and that, before you start begging Him for something. A lot of times, He'll get your attention by giving you a trial, so you'll come to Him. Come to Him before that thing ever gets there. Go to Him and call Him, not because you need something, just because you want to say hi. I mean, if you were just a horrible kid like me and all you did is ever call your parents and ask them for money, and then one day call them out of the blue and said, hey, I just want to tell you I love you, man, they'd be shocked. What do you think God's going to feel like? Wow, you really want me? Not just my toys, you want me? I think he likes that.